Hi everybody and welcome to Painting for Pleasure. I'm your host Tony Visco, and we're going to do a little bit of a pond scene with some trees in the background, some ducks in the foreground. How about that? We're going to do some ducks in the foreground. This is a little bit different for us, but we'll give it a shot and see what happens. You know, if we don't try new things, we never learn, right? So I'm going to sort of set this up. I've sketched it already. I got my ducks in the foreground. They're going to be probably silhouetted. A lot of this might be some silhouetted kind of stuff here, with a little bit of light. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a background that's going to be sort of a, I don't know, maybe a bright nighttime scene. We'll see. But what I do want to do is I want to wet this. So I'm going to do this. Now I'm using, not too great a paper at this time around. We got this standard mechanical sheet, but I thought I'd try it. Give it a shot and see what happens with it. So let's get this nice and wet, really soaked and wet in the sky area, and we'll just come down right into the trees, and then actually that's going to be reflected into the water down in this area here. So if I remember correctly, what I said to you was this paper here, if I don't wet the back, which I'm doing right now, if I don't wet the back, it's going to buckle up on me. So we're going to wet the back. We'll saturate the back so that it lays flat, because this is that mechanical paper and it curls like a son of a gun if you don't wet the back of this and the front. So I could have done this earlier off camera, but why not go through it? So yeah, we're just going to wet the paper, and then we'll dry out the areas that we don't. We got some ducks that are down here. Okay, so we'll give it a nice saturation. So it's wet, and now with a little bit of tissue, let's just take some of these areas, and we'll maybe just dry out that tree. We got a nice thin tree over here too. And our ducks we don't have to worry too much about, because we're going to paint them a little darker. It's going to be silhouetted. So we'll take, right now we're going to do while this is still saturated, I want to flow in some bright color. A nice warm light color. What I did is I just took a little bit of alizarin. I'm sorry, let's start again here. I took a little bit of my my orange, my cadmium orange, and added a little bit of opera to it. So I got just this bright red kind of stuff. Well, not quite red enough, so let me just add a little bit more. I'm going to create this sort of interesting very light. And then what we're going to do is we're going to add some pyro red to this, all in the water, and we're going to add some cobalt blue to this mixture. Sort of a purplish, not quite what I want. Let's get a bright purple. Well, it's a little bit on the dark side, but let's get a bright purple here. So let's get my opera. The opera is going to be in here. Let all of this flow together. my opera and a little bit of my cerulean blue. Cerulean blue, opera, and mix up the sky a bit. Coming down at an angle. It's about a 45-degree angle on this stuff. Right across those trees here. So we're creating a 45-degree angle sort of area. Throwing in a little bit more brighter opera in this, and I'm going to darken it up with. Now this is all wet, remember, so darken it up even more. What I'm hoping for, let's try a little bit of alizarin crimson. Make it a bit even darker than that. Purple skies. Maybe some purple skies over here. In this area. I'm trying to let that all sort of blend together. And I'm going to take my cadmium orange. Trying to keep this from getting muddy because as soon as I put, if I'm using cadmium orange, which is a red orange, and I add blue to it, you've got to be careful because it gets muddy. And I don't really want it to be muddy, but it's, and this is all wet, so but we're going to start to lift. In here, I'm going to sort of lift some light out too, right? See what I'm doing? Now we'll take the tissue, and I'm going to take some brush and sort of lift some of this out of here. Brighten some of this up. Do it here. Add it to that. And let's lift some of this area right here out. Just come down here and just what I'm doing is just basically coming in here with clear water. I want this to soften up too, by the way. I don't want it to be hard lined necessarily. So I'm just sort of playing around with this thing. We're creating, I guess, it's sky illusions or illusions of some clouds in the sky. Maybe a little bit darker in certain areas, a little stronger. So we'll use a little bit of a darker pigment, but this is still wet. And so let's see where that goes. I'm probably overworking this already. Not a thing I really want to do, but we want to let this go. What we want to do is just softly come in here and just let that go and let this form some interesting patterns, I guess, if nothing else, light patterns for the sky. The sky's wispiness here and there. And while I have that, because I'm going to start to put in some of my greenery, I'm going to take my round brush here, but so let's basically take a little bit of yellow ochre, we'll add some cerulean blue to it, and we're going to come in here and start to look at creating some tones, light tones back here. I'm going to take a little bit, what I'm going to do is I'm taking a little bit of my lavender as well. Okay. I got a tree in here. And a tree in here. We're just coming over here. This is my ground back here. Seems to me everything I touch is going to be muddy right now, I guess because this is all still pretty wet. Some of these trees here, some of them are going to be darker. It's a muddier, a little bit of alyssum and crimson and mixture with my cobalt blue. Now, what I'm doing is I'm actually putting in a little bit more pigment. I'm using a little bit of lavender over here right now with a mixture of that green. So it was a combination of lavender, my yellow ochre, and my new gamboge. But nonetheless, what I want to do is I just want to create some dark areas back here, certainly, but not necessarily. I don't want to necessarily go too dark on this stuff because it's off in a distance, and because it's off in a distance, you just don't want to make sure that it's setting back. So a little bit of dark up here. This is all going to sort of blend together anyway. The other thing I want to do is I want to come over here with rinse my brush out, pick up a little bit of lavender, and I'm going to come in here with my opera, okay, opera and lavender, blue-gray, right? It's a nice little gray. So what we're dealing with here is a gray in the background of this mountainous area, of this hill or mountain in the background. Now this is just a made-up scene. I took this from a combination of a couple of things. The pond next to me that had some ducks in it, so I'm using that. as part of this. And we're going to let that all play together. I'm going to put some trees right in here, letting all of this sort of dry out, or not dry out, but wick down, as you can see. Just, it's right again. You can tell it's just super wet right now. So there's not going to be a lot of definitive lines to put in here at this point. We'll deal with that all later on. So what we do have is we got this sort of tree coming down here, but we got all of this here is going to be water, and we got a lot of foliage fill over here. And we're going to treat that very loose. And I'm coming down from the wet area as you can see into the dry area. Okay. Scumbling effect, I guess, a little bit of that. Alright. Making a change over. Water. So this is still my back painting, I guess, if nothing else. You know, it's just not just laying in some tonal value. But I want this warm. I want that background area. I want this all warm in here. So I'll show you my reference in this. I mean, basically none of that background is in this, but let's see if I can see this. And here's my reference material right here. See, it's just a cluster of brushes and so forth. But I never like that straight across kind of look for the trees, all in the background. So I just changed it up a bit back there. Adding some opera into this to give me some brighter branches or where all of this foliage is here. And again, I'm trying to keep this sort of interesting, warm, and loose. Alright, so there's some reds coming down this way. Keep it nice and warm. We'll darken this up as we go forward. We'll just let that set up here a little bit. And just wetting that area there. So we got what is it? We have a rock in this area right here. And we have a sort of rock there, and something in here. Maybe we got a little bit of a rock out here. This paper's always just nothing but, I'm sorry, excuse me. That paper's just nothing but saturated. And, you know, it's wet on both sides. It's not laying flat either. But we'll get this to work to our advantage. We'll deal with this pretty nicely. Let's just take some combination of cerulean blue, cobalt blue. It's really bright out here, but as we come into this area here, for instance, we're just going to touch this up a bit. Now, what I mean by touching it up a bit is just a little bit of paint, a little bit of water. Drag this out. All right. Okay, let's just take and let's get some duck there. Little duck there. So I'm putting these in against the light, dark against the light water. So some of these are going to be really colorful. Here's an example. So we'll make some of these darker. Just want to give this we'll work this all out so that maybe the heads will be darker in some areas and the duck's bodies are going to be lighter. Okay, and we'll do one here as well. Again, it's just a silhouetted body of the duck itself, varying up in terms of its colors and Okay. Look at my little ducks. Little ducks in the pond. Alright. So while we're letting this all sort of dry out over here, we need to come in here, and it's still a little bit too wet, going to take the water out. Now what we want to do is really get a little bit more consistency, a little bit more paint consistency. The idea behind that is to drive a little bit more value into this. And it's, right now we don't have a lot of value. We have a situation where we have a very wet environment. Let me see if I can take this brush here, and maybe even pull some strong lights . Okay. What we're doing is we're just trying to create some nice light areas against what we're doing over here, what we're seeing. Combination of lights and darks. All right. Done, and right there. Let's go. So light, some of this is lighter. Some of this is going to be darker. All right. So some of that is nice and light back there. Let me get some. Want to get some fresh water. This is very wet, so it's a little bit wetter than I would normally be painting it. I would be telling you to let that dry a little bit more. Or what I would also be telling you is to get a little bit more density of pigment, more like butter, let's say, than anything else. Tree. Okay. We're going to do some branches. Again, let's remove some of this. So what I'm doing is, basically I'm doing is designing this as I paint it. A little light area back there. Now, what I'm doing here is just putting the grass behind this tree, or the we have a fallen tree that's right here, and what we need is a darker pigment. We got a, let's say we got a fallen tree right in here too. Okay, and we have my setup. I'm doing my grassy structure. This is going to be all dark behind this rock too, or warmer too. This is all, it's all going to be landmass. All right. Okay, foreground, I'm coming into the foreground, so see what I'm doing is I'm talking about making that nice and dense. Light color, it's probably yellow ochre, but stronger pigment. Right. Those trees. Stand out a bit. maybe some heavy darker green. A lot more pigment just in some of these areas over here, for instance. And about what I'm doing is I'm creating some darks back here, but I don't want them everywhere. Okay, some strong values will help this out, but again, you don't want the strong values everywhere. You want them just in as a means to accent some of this stuff. Okay, and again, what are we doing? Just creating some brush. Creating some brush. Alright. We have probably over here, nice, we got this beautiful rock. It's a little bit of darker area there, make that light there. Down here. Oh, look what we did here. All right. Now, so we got our lead in coming in over here. We'll do some other stuff here. We want to create a little bit more interesting rock patterns. And okay. So I'm going to make this tree here. bring this down, we'll wet this. Okay, we'll bring that over there. A couple of real tall. Tall trees that are right there. We'll darken those up in a bit. A little bit on the wet side. My landmass back there, get a little bit more of a some more value in there. Now I'm gonna do some leafy stuff here. So what I'm gonna do is get my rigger, script brush or a rigger, however you want to call it. Okay, and we're going to start to put in some. This is nothing but a lot of brush. So they're all a lot of, what I'm doing is just basically a lot of fine line work here. That's bright. You can see what I'm doing. So I'm just pulling in some fine lines. Should probably do some, let that dry a little bit. Gotta let all of this stuff here, let this dry here. See how wet it is? Create some shadows on this thing here, maybe a couple of shadows across here. Paper's wet. All right. Okay, make some dark under there. Actually dark in there, and if that thing goes into the water, so what we're going to do is we're going to create some twigs. Well, not twigs, but branch, you know. Trees falling. Tree fell. Well, let's do this same thing over here. Let's get some really nice heavy darks under this one. And a couple of logs that are bending over, falling over. We'll put some shadow over there so that you can see it a little bit better. So what I'm doing is I'm just creating some darks where these trees come down and hit at the bottom where the grass is. Let me see if I can get this over here because I don't want to. Alright, same thing with this. We're going to just, we'll break these up a bit. There's a lot of branches that come off in here right now. Okay, well, let's do little scumbling scar marks, I guess. Okay. Now, what I want to do is I want to create, if this is dry enough, let's see, some real heavy dark up here. Okay. So what am I dealing with here? So it's dark against light, light against dark, I guess. Huh? All right, so now, okay. Whoa, look what I did. Water. Colored water. Okay, so we got the trees in there. It's still wet. All right. Let's get a little, I think we need to get a little bit more definition up here with regard to some of the stuff that's going on back here. Okay, mama, look at this. Let's get a little bit more definition in those. They stand out a bit more. I think we're going to do something in here too. Between those. Probably not as bright. Kill that. Yeah, I think that may look a little bit better. Hard to say. Okay. Take out some of those trees off in the background. Some foliage over here. My ducks in the water. What we do have to do here in terms of the ducks, we need some reflection. You know, ducks. Ducks. All right. Reflections. 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 Okay, reflections. All right. Got the tall trees. Take some light out here and there. I'm going to put some branches in. We should be done. Stuff off in the distance. Okay, so we're going to end up okay, so we're going to end up on these trees, on these tall trees. Okay. Alright, so we got some nice clusters of leafy stuff going on up there, and we're going to end up so let's get this a little bit warmer in there. Okay, we gotta let that dry. It's humid down here, very humid while I'm painting this, so we're not gonna end up I'll let that dry. I probably should get the dryer to dry that. Just leave my... I wonder if I can scrape some of this here. Let's see how wet it just stays wet. Very humid in here. So I need some darks in here. I need some stronger darks. All right. A little bit of French ultramarine blue. And some burnt sienna. These are trees off there. Let that dry a bit. This is going to dry a little bit more. This branch, this tree trunk that's Okay, so I'm just taking and enhancing some of these. Okay. Okay, let's do some leafy stuff now. There you go. Um, okay. Yeah, okie doke. That's about it. I'm going to just stop it here, I think. how wet this is. That is really still wet. Okay, because it's wet because, excuse me, I apologize. It's wet because the just too humid in here. It's going to take a while to dry. So that's going to be it for now. That's our painting for today. Thank you for being with me. I'm your host, Tony Visco. You can catch me on, catch my YouTube videos. Just type in P. Anthony Visco when you get to YouTube, and it should come up. And you can see a lot of my paintings on www.panthonyvisco.com. This is all water. Reflections. So thanks an awful lot for being with me. Take care. Bye-bye.